Welcome back, everyone. Okay, I'm going to date myself here. But, I'm watching the Grammys these days and everything else. Now, granted, I'm about to show you my age. But I was just thinking to myself, I wonder if artists exist today that don't need 75 dancers on stage in bathing suits with fireworks going off. And that, my guest is laughing, by the way, and you're going to know why in a minute, and all this stuff. How about just the honest approach of maybe one instrument with a microphone to the audience, maybe a few instruments, to the audience, direct, intimate, relationship. Okay. For the better part of 65 years, believe it or not, we've had the premier venue right here in our community dedicated to that kind of communication, that kind of rapport. And it's Cafe Lena in Saratoga. And joining me today is the executive director of, I think that's the right title, is, hello, Sarah, how are you?
Hi, Jesse. I'm real good. How are you today?
Good, fine, thank you. In the corner of my eye while I was giving that intro, I could see you starting to laugh, And I think to myself, all right, so I might be dating myself a little bit. You relate to this. I know you relate to this. But the reason I was thinking about saying that is when you think about the history of Cafe Lena. And and my wife moved into Saratoga in the 70s. I remember meeting Lena Spencer, say that 3 times fast, and and just the whole sense of the artist coming in and out, the anticipation in the crowd, the sort of gentle rapport between the audience and the artist. It was just so fascinating. And I remember when you came on, you and I've known each other a number of years now, how I felt about you taking those reins. Those are impossible shoes to fill, and you not only filled them, you pay so much respect to the tradition of what we're talking about here, and have made it your own. Sarah, I think it's pretty remarkable.
Well, I really appreciate those kind words, Jesse. And it took me a little while to get to know the place and to understand what I was dealing with. I think that if I had fully appreciated how much Cafe Lena means to people before I took the job, I think I would have been too scared to take it because it really is an important place for a lot of people. But it has been an amazing 30-year run for me here. And I think for a lot of that time, I felt like it was just a matter of keeping Lena's vision alive. But I think that it really has evolved over the years, and there is a lot of kind of new layers and new possibilities to the place these days.
I know there's a through line here somewhere, Sarah, and I'd love to know what you think that is. You got to go all the way back to 1960, right? Okay.
Yeah, 65 years ago.
And so if you look at May of 2025, do you see a through line? And if you do, what do you think it is?
Well, I think it's partly what you were just talking about when you said, you see a fabulous performance with 75 dancers on stage and all the lights and all the bells and whistles, but you know that whatever they're performing in that moment started as probably one person with their hands on one keyboard or maybe with a 6-string guitar in their hand in a room by themselves, just letting their imagination go. And it grows and grows into something like that. And what you get here back in May 1960, and you still get here in May 2025, is that raw essence of creation. You get the song in its unproduced, most simple form. And that's not to say that we don't have a lot of bands. In fact, we probably have more bands than we do solo acts. And, there's very carefully worked out arrangements, but still, like you said, there's an intimacy to it. I think there's also a through line in terms of how people are welcomed into the space, that it's always been human to human. Okay. It's not really about like you're a customer and you're the professional performer and I'm the venue worker, but more this sense that we're all here to make something happen together. And back in Lena's day, that might have been people crashing here for weeks at a time when they were between tours. People don't really do that anymore, but they're welcome to the couch for the night if that's what works for them. Also, Lena was always looking for a mix of promising newcomers, people just starting out in their careers and, starting to make waves. And she also loved to welcome in the people who, are the troubadours who have been at it for decades. And that's still reflected in our programming mix today. Um, People are still expected to share their table with strangers. We assign people to tables together. And so there you are, you're all gathered around a little table face to face with people you've never met. And that is a very, very rare experience in today's world. And it is really good and healthy for people. And sometimes I think that's people's favorite part of the night. Um, People don't talk during the show. That was an absolute in 1960, and it still is today. People are here for the music. There's nobody circulating around trying to get you to buy more drinks during the show. Everybody's here for the music. And I think one other thing that I would throw in is that there's a place for everyone here. So, your place might be you join the volunteer team and you go into the kitchen, you roll up your sleeves and you do a sink full of dishes. Or it might be sitting on the best couch in the room or the front row table, or it might be taking your place on the open mic stage. So it really is a community that has many, many entry points, and whatever your talents or your tastes are, there's a place for you here.
Oh God, that's so well said, and it's so true. Yeah, Sarah, while you were saying that, I was visualizing myself in the space. That's how I feel when any of the number of times I've been to Lena's. It was like that. And when you were just talking about that, I remember way back walking in, and you had to go up the steps, right? The old Lena's. You go up the steps, and there was a chair up top, and Lena sometimes would be sitting in the chair sleeping or something. It was just like you were home. You were coming home.
Yeah.
What was the feeling? I want to cycle back on something else. You had just said, someone said to me once, just remember, Jesse, great production can't save a bad song. And I always love that phrase because it's so true. It did start with one guitar, with one person. And one just quick story, George Martin, the producer for the Beatles. Some of you may have heard of this band from Liverpool.
They're going to be big someday.
Yeah. Sarah, I'm with you 100%. But if one of the Beatles came to the studio and said they had a song, their producer, George Martin, would make them sit on a stool with one guitar and play it for him. And there's a beautiful, on YouTube you can find this, of Paul McCartney playing For No One, just by himself with a guitar, left-handed, of course, upside down, which defies imagination, but playing For No One, and your jaw hits the floor. Because George Martin knew if the song made it at that level, then have a ball. Add the London Symphony Orchestra, have a ball. But the song existed. That's what Lena represents. Lena represents the opportunity for that artist to discover that with an audience, and for that audience to discover that song and what it might mean for them personally. So,
That's absolutely right. And one of my dreams, this is not really pertaining to your question exactly, but one of my dreams is all these amazing people come through SPAC every summer, right? At the Live Nation shows. And what I would love would be for some of those people, like let's take somebody like Robert Plant, for example, who's got good songs. Okay. Come over here and sit down on Lena's stage with 100 people and talk about what goes into your songs and play some songs and maybe play a snippet of some new thing you're working on, or tell the story of how one of your hits got started. I would love to be able to do that. It's hard to, the thing is like, as you go up the food chain in your career, you get farther and farther removed from the audience. You forget how to look people in the eye when you're making art. And that can be a very intimidating experience for people who are used to just kind of looking in a wall of lights and they don't see anybody out there. They're just sort of up there by themselves, doing a rehearsed show. But the improvisation and the back and forth and the eyes, create an entirely different experience. And sometimes it's some of the biggest performers, biggest names that we have that get the most nervous before they go on stage here, because they're seeing them. They're seeing the ears for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, right. And no one would know better than that artist that great production can't save a bad song. They know
Yeah.
it. They're there and they know that. That's so true. Having stood on many stages in my life and just looking out at it could be at SPAC with thousands of people and the bright lights and whatever. And then you just, when you're there and that audience member is 5 feet from you, and they're looking at you and they're judging you and they're trying to get to know you and you're trying to let them know that you have something you would like to say to them. It's
Yeah.
remarkable. Sarah, I'm going to let this interview go as long as it needs to go, okay? And to our viewers, if that's the case, it's going to take up the whole show, all right? It 65 years. I spotted something called the Anniversary Folk Heritage Series. And I tried to look it up. I'm pretty sure I know what this is. Maybe you're bringing some artists back throughout the history of Lena again in this 65th celebration. But give us a heads up on what's going on with that.
Yeah. So, especially for the month of May, we've been trying to bring in more people than usual who have been important in maintaining that through line that we talked about, that carries the music from 1960 to today. So one part of that is this official folk heritage series. And the show for that is going to be Roy Bookbinder, who is going to be with us on May 29th. Roy he is a kind of back porch blues artist who has been in it since 1968. That's when he first started performing here. He first came to Cafe Lena as a driver for the Reverend Gary Davis, who is one of the big names of that 1960s folk revival era of blues, one of those players from the South that had been kind of forgotten about and saw a late career revitalization during that era that's covered in that Dylan movie that so many people have seen lately. So Roy started as Gary Davis's driver, and he spent his younger years just traveling around the South studying directly with a lot of those old blues players and picked up a lot of stories and a lot of licks, and has just devoted his whole life to this art form and is really one of the foremost authorities on American blues and is a tireless storyteller and has a million songs in his toolkit and just sits up there and he's Roy Bookbinder for a couple of hours and it's a whole lot of fun. So that's on May 29th. But we have actually, if I may, just a couple of other shows that are, could have been part of the series, but I just had to pick one. And one of them is a 90th birthday tribute to the late, great Utah Phillips. Jesse, you might remember Utah. If you were lucky, you saw him here at Lena's. This was really the stage where he got his start as a folk singer, and his legacy continues to influence young folk singers, especially young folk singers who have a commitment to social justice, because that's really his thing. He's a union organizer. He's a voice for the poor, voice for the hungry. He ran a homeless shelter actually in California. He was absolutely side-splitting in the way that he skewered politicians. At one point, he ran a tongue-in-cheek campaign for president of the United States, and his party was the Sloth and Indolence Party. He was just like a Mark Twain style, Woody Guthrie style, just smart, funny, all-American folk singer. So we have 4 people who are coming through on May 15th, which is a Thursday night, and it's the start of our anniversary weekend, to do Utah Phillips songs, to reprise his just what he was all about. And that kicks off the weekend. We're actually also going to be unveiling a new table that's going to be a permanent part of the listening space that is inscribed in honor of Utah Phillips, because he's such an essential part of what Cafe Lena is.
When you were describing it, I remember being in town in the late 70s, and he was at Lena's. Now, I had seen him, and I'm not certain that I had seen him at Lena's. That I'd have to dig up the memory bank someplace there. But when you said Mark Twain, that really, that if anybody in our audience is thinking, oh, I've heard that name, Utah Phillips, you would have to there's plenty of stuff on him. And Sarah, the fact that you decided to pick him is so telling. I mean, when you think about not only the kind of music that we're talking about, but the social impact that this music can have and how it helps people organize. Hey, it doesn't go unnoticed that what goes around comes around, and you're starting to see a lot of this again now in music because of just the climate and just the way things feel. You know, this is not that wasn't the first time it happened, and it won't be the last time that it happened either.
No, and folk songs are always going to be there. New topical songs. It's like that's one way that people express their feelings about a moment is by creating music about it and singing songs together. And so, there's songs that lead us into war and songs that stop wars and songs that, created the civil rights movement and certainly union songs have been very much a part of union organizing, which is something that Utah Phillips represents. So it's like songs can lead us to do our worst things and our best things. It's just very powerful.
You know, the other thing that songs like that do, Sarah, is they give you permission. If you hear a song that aligns with something that you may have been thinking, may not have been able to articulate, but you might be concerned about or something, and an artist verbalizes it. Think about what that does. It just gave you permission to think something or know that you weren't alone in that thought, you know?
Absolutely. And when you pair the actual, the verbal expression with the melody, it's like, it opens up your heart and mind in a way that words alone just can't.
Sing in the Streets is coming up. Sorry, I didn't mean to shift gears. But again, every single one of these topics I could talk with you for days about. Singing in the Streets. That started a few years ago, right? It's kind of a citywide celebration, right? A number of spots around town.
Yeah, so this is actually our fourth annual, and we always do it on our anniversary weekend. So since this is a bigger anniversary, it's a bigger festival. And we'll have 7 stages altogether. There'll be 4 in the Phyla Street neighborhood, a couple up on Broadway, and 1 kind of floating performer doing a fun activity with people. So it goes from noon to 4 on Sunday, May 18th. And it's, completely free. We've tried to stagger the bands starting on the different stages so you can actually put your walking shoes on and hustle around a little bit, and you can get a taste of most of the music that's going to be happening. Bring the family because there's 1 stage devoted to children's music because children are our future, and they're a big part of what we're doing down at Cafe Lena these days. So we've got a whole kids stage. We've got some great jazz. We've got folk. We've got bluegrass and Americana. We have young bands and more seasoned bands, and it should really be a slamming event. It's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of up-tempo music for 4 hours.
And a wonderful chance to bring the community together around music, which is something you and I just really, I know how you and I both feel about that. And to our viewers, the one question I didn't get to with Sarah is, if someone has never been to a show at Lena's, what would you expect? And, just to let you know, from experience, from many, many years, you feel welcome. There is no pretense. It's just an honest place to feel that you could go, listen to music, discover something new, hear an artist you might not have heard. Go hear bluegrass, go hear Chuck do jazz on Tuesday nights. Go to Storytelling, which is another Tuesday of the month. You'll see the website at the bottom of the screen, and I'm being told that the battery's going to run out. The website is at the bottom of the screen. Please go there. You'll find out everything you need to know. And Rusty, Thank you so much for that. You knew I
You're
was
welcome, Punk.
you knew I was going
All
to
right.
do
Thanks
it,
for
right?
having me, Jesse.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Yep. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.